Back in the old days, beachcombers often found strange leathery objects washed up on the sand. They didn't know they were shark, skate or ray egg cases, so they gave them mythical names like mermaid's purse or devil's purse. Speaking of purses, how would you like a little extra cash in yours? Fill out our Word on the Reef listeners survey and you'll go in the draw to win $100 Australian. It only takes a few minutes and your feedback helps us improve the show and secure grants to keep bringing you awesome reef stories. The link's in the show notes. Thanks so much. Now let's dive into today's episode. Good morning and welcome to Word on the Reef. I'm your host, diver and marine conservationist, Tanya Murphy. And joining me, as always, is Cairns Aquarium's marine educator and fish whisperer, Brett Goodban.
Good morning. Another week gone.
Another week, another terrible joke.
Oh, here we go, people.
Okay, are you ready for today's ocean joke?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Why should you always keep your mouth closed when you're swimming in the ocean?
Oh, I don't know.
Because the seaweed.
Oh, the seaweed, righto. Oh, do you know what? That's actually really funny. I like that.
And so speaking of sea plants, today's show is all about sea grasses of the Great Barrier Reef. They may not get as much attention as the flashy corals, but sea grasses are the unsung heroes of the reef and also extremely vulnerable. That's why they're being studied by researchers at the James Cook University Centre for Tropical Water and Aquatic Ecosystem Research.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, say that 10 times. I couldn't even say it one time. Yeah. But that's no wonder why they call it Trop Water for short.
Nice.
Anyway, Trop Water researchers are looking for volunteers to help restore seagrass meadows right here in Cairns and also near Innisfail. So if you want to make a real hands-on difference, stay tuned because later in the show we'll tell you how to get involved. But first, why are seagrasses so vital and what's causing their decline? To answer these questions, we're joined today by Dr. Tim Smith, Senior Research Officer at Trop Water. He's a marine ecologist who has spent years studying seagrass and fisheries ecology both here in Australia and overseas. Good morning, Dr. Smith. Welcome to Word on the Reef.
Good morning. Thanks very much for having me.
Morning, Doc. How you going?
Very good, thank you.
It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, brilliant.
Now, when people think about the Great Barrier Reef, they think of colourful corals, but a significant part of the marine park is made up of seagrass meadows. How much are we talking about?
The estimates of seagrass throughout the Great Barrier Reef are around 35,000 square kilometres, so there's a lot of seagrass.
Well, the Great Barrier Reef itself is about 350,000 square kilometres, so is that like
10%?
10%.
I think.
Jeez, I'm glad you said that. My coffee hasn't kicked in yet.
That's correct, because that was pretty quick maths.
All right.
But yeah, seagrass can grow in a lot of that sandy area in between the reefs down to the deepest seagrass recorded in the GBRs at about 75 metres. So it can be in a lot of those habitats. A lot of the time it might not be that much because it can come and go. But yeah, there is a lot of habitat for seagrass to grow.
Wow, and it does need sunlight to grow just like corals do. So to know that it can grow all the way down at 75 metres is interesting.
Yeah, that's some serious photosynthesis, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're plants, as we'll talk about later, I think, but they need light to photosynthesize, so depth's often a limiting factor on how deep they can or where they grow, because if it gets too dark, they can't grow.
So they can grow as deep as 75 metres, but what sort of areas do you typically find seagrass in?
Yeah, so you don't typically find them that deep, particularly in inshore areas, but they inhabit a lot of the estuarine areas. So in Cairns, as soon as you go out past the marina, there's seagrass on both sides. So straight out in front of the airport, and then on the other side as well, there's lots of, there's big meadows there. So those estuary environments further up in Trinity Inlet, there's quite a lot of little patches. A lot of the port areas where there's lots of muddy intertidal banks, they're often covered in seagrass. But then also, so in those deep water habitats, there's some different species that grow down there, some smaller species. But then also places like, so Green Island is probably the best seagrass in the GBR. Yep. And it's beautiful. We were out there actually last weekend, and the seagrass out there is amazing. And so those sort of rubbly islands as well, seagrass can grow in. So it's sort of all different habitats, different species. So
Awesome. Well, as a tourist, if you want to see seagrass meadows, you can't really snorkel in the inlets and marinas because of the risk of crocodiles.
Yes.
But further out at Green Island, I've snorkeled, and it's a good place to find sea turtles because they eat seagrass, don't they?
yeah, Green Island's a fantastic place to experience seagrass. And it actually is, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but it can be quite beautiful if you get down there and you have a look and have a snorkel around. But yeah, you'll see turtles because turtles love eating seagrass. So that's sort of one of their main habitats. Green Island's a great place for seeing turtles
the greenies
seagrass.
love it over there, don't they?
Yeah.
The green sea turtles, they love that grass.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's not called Green Island because it is covered in green trees, but that's not how it got its name. It does have a lot of green sea turtles, but that's not how it got its name. It's got a lot of seagrass meadows, but it's actually just named after someone called Mr. Green.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I only found out about that after working over there for so many years, and I went, really?
Well, I'm really glad it wasn't named after Mr. Brown because it wouldn't be quite as appealing.
Brown Island? Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, so you have to admit, I'm a bit biased. I always swim over to where the coral areas are.
Yeah,
But
me too.
Tim's biased in the opposite
Yeah.
direction. You'll be heading
Yeah.
straight for the seagrass beds.
Yeah, and when we go there, you do see like all the little fish living in there. You can see sea cucumbers, all the giant clams are in there.
Yeah.
The blue spot rays are swimming around in there, and there's the GTs hang out, the sharks hang out. They all hang out in that seagrass area. And if you look carefully, there'll be lots of little juvenile lithronids, so emperors, and lots of small little baby fish as well hanging out. So,
Because they're using it for protection as well, aren't they?
yeah.
It's
So
like
it's a little
universe.
nursery. That's sort of what we refer
That's the
to.
word I was looking for. Yeah.
And it's one of the real importances of seagrass is that lots of fish and invertebrates love living in seagrass, and they might just spend a small part of their time in there when they're little, because it provides lots of protection and also there's lots of food, so lots of little invertebrates, like small little amphipods and crustaceans and worms for them to eat. So it's a really good habitat for the smaller fish.
I am going to dedicate more of my time to checking out the seagrass now next time I'm snorkeling because you got to look close, it's not just about the big sea turtles.
Isn't that where you see all the kids and families on a Sunday in the park on the grass? With the kids running around,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's the same thing underwater.
Well, it's actually for I took my 6-year-old daughter over there and she loves snorkeling in there because it's easy. You can walk out. There's lots to see. So it's kind of an ideal little family place to have a snorkel and start getting into the marine environment.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hopefully all our listeners have a newfound appreciation of seagrass. But there's a lot more to seagrass than just us being able to snorkel on it and see cool stuff. Why is seagrass important to the Great Barrier Reef ecosystem?
Yeah, so as I just mentioned, like the nursery function is really important, particularly for some certain species, like some of the prawn species. So Cairns is actually a great example. Tropwater, or in fisheries, did some surveys in the Cairns Harbour, just out off the Esplanade there in the 90s, and there was lots of prawns, sort of juvenile, small little prawns, lots of little fish. And then there was a big decline around 2013, 2014, and there wasn't much grass left. And so they went back, and then there was no fish and no prawns. So it can have a big impact on the prawn fishery.
Yeah.
And some of those key species, especially like your emperors, they spend their time there and then they move out onto the reef when they're a bit older. So it's really key for those species, but also it's a really great carbon storage place. So blue carbon, we hear a lot about blue carbon.
Yeah.
So mangroves are sort of the best,
The
but
main ones.
seagrass are the next best at storing carbon. So for climate change mitigation, there's a lot of discussion about how we can look after seagrass habitats and restore
It's a
seagrass.
very similar role to the mangroves, isn't it, the seagrass?
Yeah, so
Giant nursery, carbon sink, lots of fish.
also stabilises sediment.
Yep.
Because the roots of the seagrass hold all the sediment together. It helps prevent erosion and storm surge. It can also really good at nutrient cycling, so it can take nitrogen out. And there's a few studies, and this is pretty early days, but taking things like E. coli out of the system. So particularly in developing countries where the septics aren't as great, places that have lots of seagrass seem to have a little bit less sickness and less E. coli. And that we haven't really delved into this too much, but helping areas with a bit of seagrass around can take out some of the diseases that the reef sees as well. So that's a bit of hasn't been studied too much because it's difficult to study, but lots of different ecosystem services, as we call it. So yeah, it is really important.
I pulled some stats up. Despite covering less than 0.2% of the ocean floor, seagrasses may account for up to 18% of the ocean's carbon burial.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because they photosynthesize and they trap and take in carbon, and then they put it down into their root systems underneath the soil, where it can stay for centuries or millennia. And you mentioned stabilizing the seafloor. So imagine if there's no seagrass, then you're just going to have more mud out there that's floating around instead of being held down.
Yeah.
It's very similar. We had a great interview with a guest a few weeks ago from Tree Force, and they talked about planting trees on land. That stops the mud from all running off into the water and making it murky and turbid. And also acts as a filter, sucking up all the fertilizers and nutrients. So it really makes sense what you're saying, that once the plants are in the water, they're doing the same thing. They're holding things together and they're sucking up the nutrients that helps to improve water quality.
Yeah.
These seagrasses are working really hard for us. And
There's a lot of connections that people can make on land to what we're talking about too. Like, if you don't have seagrass, then you've got all that sediment running through. It'd be like the Sahara Desert in a sandstorm. But if you have trees there, then it stops that happening.
Yeah, and you can even see that, like you see that sometimes around the seagrass meadows, you'll see the edge of the meadow and you can see down like half a foot or even a foot sometimes, and that's where the roots are holding all the grass together. And then next to it on the edge, it's just the sand's just getting washed away. So it's a big step up onto the seagrass meadow sometimes. You can really see it. So yeah, it certainly works well. And it does have a bit of a positive feedback loop. So if the seagrass is there, it can take those fine sediment out of the water column and it gets better light, and then so it can grow better. Whereas if there's no seagrass there, it's actually hard for it to start to grow because there's nothing to take that sediment out of the water.
it's a downward spiral. Once it gets muddy, then the seagrass can't get enough sunlight to come back.
Yep.
So it's just so exciting to hear what the benefits could be of planting seagrasses, knowing that they can do all of these things like solve problems like water quality issues, or maybe not entirely solve them, but take us a good step of the way.
Yeah, certainly contributes a lot. Yeah.
So,
Really cool.
Dr. Smith, what is the difference between seagrass and seaweed?
Oh, this is a good one. This is the one take-home message. Seagrass is not seaweed.
Listen up, people.
This is if you remember one thing from this hour, it's the difference between seagrass and seaweed.
Right.
So seagrass is a plant. It's like the grass that grows in your backyard, like a tree. So it has roots. So it needs sediment and to take nutrients out of the sediment. And it has flowers and seeds. So it produces pollen. The flower releases pollen, then it gets fertilized and it produces seeds. So whereas algae produces spores, so it's kind of like a really tricky different life cycle that I don't want to try to explain.
It's like a more primitive early before plants evolved to the point where they had flowers and things. So seaweed is an algae.
Yep. And so seagrass, it actually moved from the land back into the water millions of years ago.
What turtles did as well. They were land reptiles and then they got back in the ocean.
Right.
And the same with dolphins and whales. They were land mammals and then they went and started swimming in the ocean and evolved into whales.
Yep.
And so seagrass did the same thing.
Yep. So the big difference is they're just like plants. They produce seeds to reproduce and they have roots to take nutrients out of the sediment. They're the two big ones, the difference from algae.
I would have grown up just thinking any type of underwater plant is seaweed, you know, but there's a big difference.
No, a big difference. And I guess we're trying not to get too technical, but when they photosynthesize, they use the same pigments that, your land plants do, whereas algae have different pigments generally.
Yep.
Well, I was actually blown away. I have to admit, I'm always drawn, like I said, to the corals. I'm a basic coral girl. So I actually just only found out that seagrasses have flowers just like land plants, and I was blown away. Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and they're quite cool. Some of them are really pretty and some of them are very basic. So there's about 12 species, depending on who you talk to, in the GBR. They're very different, most of them. They live in different habitats. And so some of them, say, Enhalus or Thalassia, which is flowering at the moment out at Green Island. It's got quite a big fruit, probably about the size of a 50-cent coin, and seeds.
Have I never seen these fruits and flowers?
If you're not looking, they're a bit hard to. They sort of stay on the sediment.
But are these flowers colourful, like a beautiful rose?
Yeah, what are we looking for, mate?
Well, they're not. They're kind of brown and they're not that exciting. But if you split them open, they're full of little seeds, about 5 mils across.
Wow.
Or centimetre
I
across.
suppose we shouldn't do that, though.
Actually, come
because
That's quite
to
cool.
think of it, I have seen seaweed out there with the little, that look like little seeds
Pods.
hanging off it in pods.
Yeah, so algae has air sacs to help it stay up straight
Oh, right, like little air
as
pockets.
well. Yeah, so a lot of the time
I feel like it's my first day. I'm just sitting here going, what?
Wait, so algae wears floaties to
Yeah,
help it
algae
stay
has
upright.
floaties.
and
They
float
got their own
towards the surface.
BCDs, Tanya.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yep, help them float up, get to the surface.
Wow.
Most of the time when you see bubbles on the seagrass, it'll be the algae or the epiphytes that grow. So there's a lot of epiphytes that can grow on the seagrass.
Yeah.
And it'll generally be from that. It's
Right.
not so much
Using it as a
notice
host.
too much. Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, and some of the actually other flowers though, if you see, there's a species called inhalus. It's not so common on the GBR, but up in Torres Strait. So if you're around Thursday Island or over at Weipa, there's huge meadows, and it's really big. It's like a couple of foot long, it can be quite wide, and it has these beautiful flowers, and they just kind of open up, and then it releases a pollen. So it's like this white, it looks like polystyrene going across the top, and it does it at low tide, and it goes across the surface of the water, and it gets blown across. And so then it goes across all this pollen, and it fertilizes the other flowers. It's
That's so
really cool.
Wow.
So it's like
Yeah.
its own version of coral spawning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah, it's really obvious. You can
Wow.
see it. Most of the other, like, to be honest, one of the things for seagrass, we don't know a lot about their reproduction for a lot of species. You know, what fertilizes them, we just generally assume it's from currents and wind and things.
Yeah.
Because often they're hard to find. The flowers they are quite boring. They're a bit hard to spot. But yeah, the inhalus ones, they're just, yeah, it's really pretty. It's just like, well, it's a bit like someone just ripped a whole heap of bean bags open and they're just floating across the sort of surface of the shallow low tide. But it is pretty cool when you see it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, because I was thinking, obviously, on land, bees are like a major pollinator, taking pollen
Yep.
from flower to flower. But is there animals in the ocean that do that for seagrass?
Yeah, so again, it's not really that well understood, but there has been a couple of studies, not in the GBR, this is over in the Caribbean, in Mexico, and they found, like little tiny amphipods, so the little crustaceans, 10 mil across, a centimetre across, they actually go over to the flowers, and then they hop across the flowers and they carry the pollen across.
So cool.
The
it's so
bees
cool.
of the ocean.
Yeah.
A bumble crab.
Yep. Yeah, so and it's something we don't, it is hard to study, like trying to find the pollen. For a lot of the species, we're not even that sure when they flower. So for our restoration, the best restoration methods tend to be using seeds. Makes sense, right? Just planting seeds out. So we went out to Cairns. We've been doing some surveys for seeds in the last 10, 15 years, and we've seen a decline in the amount of seeds. And so we're wondering why that was. And then we thought, well, we've got this restoration project. We need to go out and start collecting seeds. So we started looking for the flowers last year before. We found they put up these reproductive shoots, and they've got these little flowers on there. They're called spaves, but they're pretty nondescript, look a bit like a wheat flower. But we started finding those, and then they'd get to a stage and we'd see them, and then they just start rotting. And so they don't seem to get their seeds.
Oh, no.
Like the seeds aren't developing. And so we're not sure.
Sounds
why
like a
this is.
disease, right?
Disease, maybe there's no pollinators, maybe something's happening, maybe it's at the very northern extension of Kansas, like as far as this species goes, as far north, so it's more of a temperate species. We're thinking that it might be that there's only a few clones there, so there's only a couple of individuals of the plant, so they're mostly just grown out and it's taken over, and it's only a couple, and so they can't fertilize themselves.
Yeah.
So something like that. So this is like a big
Oh, it
question
sounds
for
exactly
us
the
at the
same
moment.
as the dating scene in Cairns in general. Pretty slim pickings.
Yeah, so along those lines. So this is sort of a question we're grappling with at the moment.
Right.
What's causing that? And one of our first thoughts was maybe there's nothing to pollinate it, or maybe the pollen's dying or something like that, or maybe it's this inbreeding, or
Would the green sea turtles out there being eating all the seagrasses and stuff, would that help distribute it as well, the bits that they're chomping on and spitting out?
This is another really cool story.
Oh, yeah, good. Sorry, Tanya.
Tangents are allowed if
yes.
they lead to cool stories.
That's right.
So there's a researcher at Tropwater called Sam Toll, and she's done quite a lot of work looking at turtle and dugongs and how when they eat the seagrass, she collects the turtle and the dugong poo, and then she goes and has a look for how many seeds are in there.
I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Through the turtle hospital. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. And then so she can, when the seeds are in the poo and then they germinate, so she's taken them out, they've germinated.
Oh, like the cassowary.
Yeah.
Like,
and
there
then,
you go.
and, you know, so seagrass spends, I think it's like 24 hours in the gut, and, you know, they can swim a couple of 100 kilometres in that time. So they're actually really good dispersers of seagrass.
So maybe, you know, dugongs and turtles are under threat as well. So maybe there's less of them to bring the new seeds to the area.
Yeah, and more tangents. There's some studies, and these are back from the 90s, but they're very relevant, and there's some more work on this sort of stuff going on. But floods down in around Hervey Bay and Moreton Bay knocked over all the seagrass in the 90s.
Yes.
And following that, there was lots and lots of dugong and turtle strandings and lots of a decline in the population, basically, in those areas because they were starving. Yeah. And we've seen there's some data that should be coming out soon to follow that up with the more recent floods down there in the last couple of years. So,
yeah, well, Jasper wouldn't have helped either.
No.
Just talking about how seagrasses reproduce, they can also clone with their roots just spreading out and popping up everywhere. Kind of like, you know how you can take cuttings of a plant, so it's genetically identical, but then it can come up somewhere else. So the oldest known living organism on Earth is believed to be a seagrass meadow in the Mediterranean, estimated to be around 100,000 years old. So it's just it's the same plant, but it just keeps putting up new shoots and growing and growing. And if one part dies off, then it's got other shoots somewhere else. So it's just immortal.
Yeah, yep. And there's lots of examples of that. We actually, before I moved to JCU, I did some work. There's like 3 patches of seagrass in South America on the west coast in Chile. And we went over there and had a look at those, and they're basically 2 clones, and they're these big patches of seagrass. They're the only 3 on the whole west coast of South America, and there's only 2 clones. So one patch, 2 of the patches were the same, and they were about 300 k's apart, and then there was another one that was different. And then the other place where that species is in from Sydney to South Australia. So how did it get there? And then it's got there, and it's grown everywhere.
Wow. On the GSR.
There must be a turtle or something that swims thousands of kilometres from one to the other to spread those seeds. But the dating pool's really small there for them to cross-pollinate.
Really small.
The turtle version of Jim's mowing. They're out there collecting all the grass clippings and dumping them everywhere.
Yeah, and I guess that comes back to that thing in Cairns too, because not finding the seeds is that it's just growing. It's just growing like your grass, and it's just 1 or 2 clippings, and they're just going mad.
Maybe we could look all the way back to the Egyptian subscriptions and all that sort of stuff, and the hieroglyphics, and see if we can find any seagrass.
You mean inscriptions?
That's him. I'm doing my best.
We're all forgetting our words today.
I know. We're having so much fun with seagrass this morning. It's madness.
Who allowed us to go on the radio? We can't remember our words.
Sorry, folks.
I wonder if that's because of all the human impacts that there's been a loss of diversity, and so every time a seagrass dies, then the one mother seagrass is just growing over and over and over until the entire meadow is just one mega seagrass.
Yeah,
and there's no diversity.
I mean, if it is, it's probably really well adapted to that environment anyway. So everything's and that's certainly something. There's a little bit of evidence for that sort of thing as well. Yeah, just one big clone taking over in this habitat where it can live, and the others struggle a bit. So.
Wow. This is just like every other topic we've covered on the show. We could talk about it for 15 hours because whoever out there thought, seagrass, there can't be much to say about that. But
and then we turn up, hold them a beer. We got you covered.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
So I also want to talk to you, Dr. Smith, about your fish spy cams. You've been monitoring fish in nearshore habitats using underwater video cameras, I understand. What are those fish up to down there?
Do we really want to know?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got quite a few projects now looking at using cameras. We just put them underwater. Sometimes we put bait down there. Sometimes we don't put bait, depending on what our questions are. And then seeing what fish live in different habitats. So mangroves, seagrass, inshore rubbly reefs, some deeper habitats, some shoals, generally in inshore areas. So we had a really big project that was sort of between Townsville and Dunk Island, including the Palms and all around Hinchinbrook. And then another one up around in Mandurah Sea Country, which is sort of between Maruyan Point and Curramine. But we see lots of cool fish, especially sometimes in the mangroves. If, our viz isn't always great. But we've seen like barras and jacks, and We see some hammerheads out in a bit deeper water.
Is this live streaming? Can we go and watch these fish?
Unfortunately not. But yeah, we do see lots of different fish, lots of diversity, especially in those inshore areas. And you sort of see those juveniles. So what we were talking about before, and that connectivity between mangroves, and you see them,
Seagrass,
they're 10 centimetres long, and then especially with things like jacks, you see them there, and then you'll see them a little bit bigger in the seagrass, and then you see them out on the
life
reefs,
cycle.
and they're they're sort of 30 centimetres long, and they're becoming adults. So you'd see that really cool progression across your habitats. We spotted up some small nanoguys, so like tiny little ones, only 10 centimetres long, in some of those sort of seagrasses in about 5 metres of depth. So just reinforces that nursery habitat again.
Yeah.
The importance of seagrass and mangroves and those links across the reef.
And that's the golden ticket, isn't it, that we've had on this show since we started. It's that connectivity and that link through every ecosystem to the reef.
Yeah.
Everything.
If you lose one link in the chain, then the whole
gone.
system is in trouble.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, of course, we've only got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to zoom ahead to talk about the restoration project in Cairns and near Innisfail. But just taking a broad view first, what are the main overarching threats to seagrasses on the Great Barrier Reef?
Yeah, so as we spoke before, seagrass needs light. It's sort of like the key thing that it needs. And so a lot of the seagrasses are inshore, estuarine sort of habitats, muddy areas. So when you get a big flood or repeated floods, cyclones, rain events, that turbid plume, if the seagrasses are spending, a month, 2 months, and the water's really cloudy, they're not getting enough light, they start to die off. And so what we saw in between sort of 2009 and 2013 was a series of every year there was big floods all across the East Coast actually, and high rainfall events. So there was lots of plumes and we saw big declines. And so some areas such as Townsville came back quite quickly, only a couple of years, and all the seagrass came back. In Cairns, it's taken nearly 10 years to get back from, like 2014, there was only a patch sort of not much bigger than this room left.
Oh, wow.
In on the Esplanade. And so now it's sort of nearly back to the same size. The biomass still isn't the same. And then if you go south just past Innisfail in Maruyan Harbour, there was seagrass down there which hasn't come back at all. So we've got a project at the moment and we're taking some of the seagrass from Cairns, we're collecting it and we're planting it back down there. And so this is full of logistical challenges.
Yeah, it would be.
How do you collect it? How do you plant it? You can't just...
Is this the first time anyone's tried to do that?
Yeah.
In tropical environments, at bigger scales, definitely, yeah. And so we did some little trials and it worked okay. And then we got some funding and we've been doing it the last few years. So we go out in the harbour, we rake up the grass, we take it back, we make it so it's nice and clean, ready to plant out. We attach it to some anchors and then we plant it over the side. And then, of course, the first year we had Cyclone Yazi. The second year down at Innisfail, like last year, it was wet season, was full of floods. Yeah. And so it's been a real challenge to get much success, but
it's
this
year heartbreaking after all that work.
Yeah, so much effort. And we'd planted some pilots and they'd been growing for 3 years down there. They've been going really well. And so it just reinforces that need to have some methods in place for when these kind of events happen. And even down at off Curramine Beach and Cowley Beach, we did some surveys just in 3 to 5 metres of water, and there was quite a lot of seagrass there in 2022, and after the last 2 wet seasons that's declined dramatically. So we actually have another restoration project kicking off later this year to run some trials out there as well.
It's amazing work. You're like a landscape gardener of the ocean.
Yeah.
People are standing in their suburban front yards looking over the fence saying, my lawn's better than your lawn. But I think Tim's got the most interesting lawn of all.
That's right.
Yeah, but full of challenges. Like obviously...
no parking on your lawn.
No. Definitely no sunbaking on it.
No.
But the mud, the crocodiles, the stingers,
It's a bit more challenging to look after than your average lawn.
Yeah,
I've never seen anyone being chased by a 5-metre crocodile with a Victor lawnmower, so you win.
Yeah. Well, and down Maruyan, there's a couple of big crocs that live there. And we just stuff to,
So you don't get in the water to plant the seagrasses, do you?
No, so we take little fragments with a growing tip and we tie them onto an anchor and then we dump them over the side.
And so the anchor's like a tiny little fishing weight sort of thing?
Yeah, just a little weight, just a little biodegradable, it'll rust out over time. And so what we did this year, going back to the earlier story about the seeds, we had planned to use some seeds, but we can't get any. So this year we actually went and got some pots and a post hole digger, went over the side of the boat with the post hole digger, pulled up some seagrass, put it in pots, and then we went to Maruyan and well, we plant some back out in Cairns in some areas where there's not much grass yet. So that's sort of, there's grass going back out there. And then we go down to Maruyan and we had a hovercraft. We got a hovercraft up from the Gold Coast and we went out the side. We went up there on the mud at low tide and we just planted in.
Now you've got my attention.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super cool. It was muddy.
It's amazing.
But it was...
I mean, who's been in a hovercraft? Like, I don't think I've ever
I
seen
haven't,
one.
but I've got my hand up to go in one. Absolutely.
it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because what you're saying is you can take a hovercraft not only on water, but also up on the mud without getting
go anywhere
completely bogged.
Yep, without getting bogged. And we could just lean over the side, dig a little hole, take your seagrass out of the pot, just put it back in.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was really cool.
Hovercraft planting.
Yep. And so we did that. And so like all these projects are with the Mandurah Land and Sea Rangers who are down at Maruyan, the Gimoy and the Irukandji Rangers up here. They're all involved. Portsmouth's involved. So It's a really big community effort. Yep. And so we also have Ozfish sort of help us coordinate volunteers to come and help process the grass and help plant it out. And so there's actually a team down at Cairns at the marina today tying up some seagrass onto the weights and the boat will go out, I don't know what time, whenever they finish. So they're at the marina right now.
Oh, I hope they've got the radio on.
If you're listening, guys, good job.
and then so they're down at Maruyan tomorrow. Feel free to go down and have a look and jump in and lend a hand. You don't need any training. And there's also, we're doing it again. So we've sort of done 3 rounds this year already. There's one more round later in September. And if you go on the Ozfish website, they've got all the details if you want to help out or you just want to learn more about it. And they actually have lots of details about seagrass restoration around Australia. So check out the Ozfish website if you're thinking about helping out.
All right, Cairns community. Get out there.
How many volunteers are you talking? Like how labour intensive? It sounds labour intensive. How many volunteers and how many hours are required to plant all of this?
Yeah, so it is quite labour intensive. So we spend 2 days at the university usually, depending on how many fragments. I think we collected 2,000 fragments each day. So there's 4,000 to plan out. 2,000 go to Cairns, 2,000 go down to Maruyan.
Wow.
And so...
That's a lot of little plants that you have to plant.
Yes, lots of little plants.
Yeah.
And so we have to make sure they're like all in good condition.
You have to individually clean them, don't you?
Yeah, we just sort of trim them up and make sure they're the right length, take the roots off, make sure they're ready to grow. And then we do that. We have Newman College come over and help because they're on campus. So they come and help sometimes as well. So, big group of 20 kids, that usually helps out. And then we'll have anywhere between 6 and 15 people down tying them up. Usually, there'll be a few rangers from the different ranger groups, some Ozfish volunteers, and then some of our staff, some Portsmouth people have been down there the last few times. So, the more the merrier. It just makes everything much easier and quicker.
That could open doors for some of the schools in Cairns. You know, like the year 6s and 7s, go down for an excursion day, help out, learn about it. Brilliant.
Dr. Smith, how big is the area of seagrass that you're attempting to restore?
In Maruyan Harbour, it's about 4 hectares, so it's not a massive area, but it'll make a big difference down there for particularly the fish communities and the carbon. So, but I think the fish communities down there, because there's no other seagrass there, so when they come out of the mangroves, it gives them another habitat to live in, especially for the crabs. A bit more protection. There's not much down there, so, and it just hasn't been there for a long time. Hopefully it'll bring some turtles and dugongs into the harbour too. So that's sort of really important, and we're really keen. We've been trying to get it up for a few years now, so really excited about this year and having the hovercraft. And so in Cairns, there's already a big area of seagrass, but there's quite a few areas in the Esplanade Meadow that have traditionally had seagrass that it hasn't quite come back yet. So we're just planting it back in there. We're watching it recover and seeing how it goes. But I was saying before about monitoring the seagrass, and because a lot of the areas are on big mud flats and the water's filthy, so if we go in at high tide with the boat, can't really see anything. So what we actually do is at low tide, we get a helicopter and we spin around the whole of the meadow. So probably late October we'll do the Cairns meadows and we hover about a foot off.
Wow.
We throw out a quadrat or 3 quadrats at each site. We mark it on the GPS.
What's a quadrat?
It's just like a little wire square, 50 centimetres by 50 centimetres, so a quarter of a metre. And then you look at that and you say, okay, there's this species, and we estimate the biomass and the cover to be whatever. And then we do that all through the meadow. So like in Cairns, we probably have 150, 200 sites just in the esplanade, and then we go, okay, this is the area, these are the hot spots, this area hasn't had any grass for years. That's sort of how we do it. And so then, it's all GPS located, and then we can go back and go, okay, this hasn't had grass for years, and then we'll draw a map on our GPS and go, this is where we need to plant it.
Isn't that incredible? So all those listeners out there that walk up and down the esplanade every day, in the morning and the afternoon, look out and think about all the hard work that's being done.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
and think about how becoming a seagrass expert could have you doing James Bond stuff, like hanging out of a helicopter.
And helicopters.
Yeah, 100%. You should see the risk assessments we have to do.
Wowza. Is there somewhere we can go and look up and see these maps of over time of where the seagrass is?
Yeah, we put out an annual report, so that goes to Ports North, but you can also just find them on the Tropwater website.
And so with these seagrasses that you're planting, how strong of a survival rate do you think they will have if we get more floods in the upcoming wet seasons?
That's a really good question. And we're doing a lot of experimental work as well at the moment to look at what kind of conditions they need to survive when we plant them out. So if we plant them out under different conditions, do they survive or do they die? What's the light condition like, extra nutrients, sediment composition, things like that. So how that all affects survival. We're hoping for a mild wet season this year so that they can keep getting more light because, the sort of survival over the last couple of years has been pretty low.
Yeah. Well, I just saw in the paper today that the forecast for the upcoming spring is wetter than usual for northern Australia.
Okay.
But yes, fingers crossed for your little seagrasses that are being planted.
Like a little bit of rain. So even like, it was funny because Jasper was such a big rain event, but it actually cleared up quite quickly afterwards.
Right.
Whereas last wet season, it was persisted for a long time and that actually had a bigger impact.
Well, fingers crossed for those little seagrasses. Now, this project is currently focusing on Cairns and Marillion Harbour near Innisfail, but the Great Barrier Reef coastline is more than 2,400 kilometres long, and I'm sure there are similar threats causing seagrass problems along the entire length. So is there a way to upscale this restoration work?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There's some work being done down in Gladstone with Central Queensland University. And so they go out and they've got some restoration projects going on in Gladstone Harbour and also up at the Whitsundays. So there's areas all through the GBR that need restoration. But one of the keys for us is actually working out the really most effective methods and what's going to work and what's going to not work. Because for sort of this main species that we're working on at the moment, Zostra, which is found all the way down to Tasmania, there's lots of research. And so everyone's got some ideas on how to do it and it's been done before. But if you look at things like Thalassia or Hologily, these other species, we actually don't know as much about those. The best methods, or do they grow really badly in muddy sediment compared to sandy sediment? When do they flower? When can we collect those flowers? So a lot of our research at the moment is actually going towards working out some of those things. So then when we have a problem in the future, we can restore them. Sort of a bit of a toolbox.
So another threat to coral reefs, of course, is climate change. The heat waves that we've seen, of course, mass bleaching events. We've had 6 mass coral bleaching events in the last 9 years. What impact is that having on seagrasses?
Yeah, so seagrasses, because they're quite shallow a lot of the time, can withstand, some higher heat.
They're used to being in the sun,
But there's also some areas, Shark Bay is a classic example. I think it was about 2013.
This is in Western Australia.
They had a heat wave and it basically knocked out all their seagrass.
Wow.
So it certainly is a bit of an issue if we get really hot conditions, and particularly in some of those cooler areas, but also some of those deeper areas where it doesn't get as warm. So the intertidal ones are quite good at dealing with that intense heat, but the deeper ones, not so much. But the other thing is with climate change, we're expected to have more intense cyclones and flooding events, which, as we've talked about, that's sort of our main concern up here. So if we get more of those, that's going to be a bit of a problem. Yeah,
so we've got all these hands down planting these little seagrasses, but everyone at home, even if you can't make it to Cairns to plant some seagrasses, everything you do, wherever you are in the world, on climate action is going to help protect those seagrasses and help Dr. Smith's little seagrasses survive.
There you go. Yep,
for sure. Yeah, I think that's a big one to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, just over a minute left. Do you want to just a parting message and just reminding everyone how they can get involved?
Yeah, just get down and get to some of these restoration events.
Check out the Ozfish website, you said, to sign up to volunteer.
Website. Yeah. And it has all the dates and other programs. When they come up next year, that'll be all up there as well. So
excellent.
Awesome. So hopefully we've got about 50,000 people rocking up to the marina to help you plant seagrasses now.
And there's an ice cream shop right next door to where it is, so you can get a coffee and an ice cream. And
Did you know how to do this?
It sounds like the perfect day. Okay, Dr. Tim Smith, Senior Researcher with JCU Tropwater's Seagrass Restoration Project. Thanks for all your amazing work, and thank you for joining us on Word on the Reef today.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tim. It's been great. Thanks,
and thanks to you, all our listeners, for joining us on Word on the Reef. I'm Tanya Murphy. My co-host is Brett Goodburn, and we'll be back next Friday at 10 a.m. with more awesome marine science adventures.
Have a great week.
Best fishes.
Bye.